Welcome everybody to the second Design Talk, a series of talks with designers from all over the world, organized by Italian Design Surfaces and promoted by Materiali Casa and Surface International for the TechnaNext platform, the first sector-specific social media. And it's a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today. So welcome to Jabeen Zacharias, the first female president of the Institute of Indian Interior Designer. Welcome, Jabeen.
Thank you, Anna.
So, what is the path of studies and work experience that brought you to play such an important role?
I think I was called into it. I was a small town girl. I'm from India, and that too from the coastal state of Kerala, known as God's own country. And architecture or interior design was never part of my dreams. I always wanted to be an electronics engineer. But quite by accident, I was called into this field, I should say. And ever since, after all these years in architecture and design, when I look back, that is the biggest or the best blessing I have had. So I passed out architecture in 1984, just like all the students, very enthusiastic and very excited about doing big projects. But I think, again, there was something really different for me, which was to work for the government housing board, where you have to work with all levels of people, high income group, middle income group, lower income group. So, therefore, I found architecture as a special service which should go to people. So, my architecture is basically defined by that. However, I also had the opportunity to design some like world famous chains of hotels for Meridian and Taj. I have my offices in states, Bangalore and Dubai. This is my home state at Cochin. So 36 years into practice, I think I am so very blessed to be in this field. And ours is a family of designers also. My husband, my kids, in-laws, son-in-law, everybody, we belong to different disciplines of design. So life has been very kind to me. And I look forward to being, of some use to people by shaping their spaces.
So Jabeen, TechnaNext, the design talk, wants to present an overview to current and future scenarios in the world of surface design. And in the next half an hour, we will present your point of view. So let's start with the general question. What do finishing material represent in your design philosophy?
Design and philosophy, two words when put together, I think can change the world. Winston Churchill said, first we shape our spaces, then the spaces shape our people, and then people finally shape our destiny. So we have actually heard this quoted by so many that design is an engine for social change. Therefore, to have a very substantial, holistic philosophy about it as to how to do design where we can make a change for the planet, people, and our times is very important. I don't know whether you have heard about Shankaracharya from India. There is this famous saying which says, you cannot draw a line without changing the universe. Isn't that right? In the hands of a designer, a pencil, when they draw a line, it's not just a line, it can be a wall. And that wall can be as monstrous as the boundary wall saying no to immigrants from Mexico at the US border, or it could be as warm and comfortable, giving shelter and reassurance to a family. So that line, the way we draw it, the purpose for what we draw it is very important. Philosophy, I think in Greek, it means love for wisdom. And my philosophy for design is that our spaces are extensions of ourselves. They are not separate. The places or spaces we live in, or the vistas or avenues we walk, all reflect back as to who we are, what we are, where we are. So, finishing materials which appear in our sight and which comes into our experience through our senses should actually contribute to kind of affirming us who we are, reassuring us, very relevant to our context and our times. So that is how I think for my design philosophy, finishing material should work. In residences, for example, I look at spaces which are very intimate, where I don't need to have any pretense. I can actually be at the level of my soul. But when you go into another space, a public realm, then it is more of experiencing by skin and senses. There are other people also. So I have to groom and be present for everybody in a general sense. So the soul in residential spaces and maybe the skin and appearances, for example, a little in contract design spaces. That is how my philosophy for surface finishes for spaces largely goes, but definitely I see it as reflections of ourselves, who we are, mirrored back to us through these materials.
And from which sector do you draw inspiration for your surface projects?
Okay, here again, when I start a project, I don't start with any definite idea or anything. It's like a clean canvas. Maybe I think the correct answer to your question on what I assume or what I imagine is like Shakespeare said, the world is a stage. The world is a big stage, and life is like a drama, an opera in constant performance where scenes unfold and we are all characters playing roles, delivering our dialogue. And the space with its surfaces, with its materials, whatever it stands for, is the set. The set is usually silent, but that actually prompts the people to deliver the right dialogue also. That is when it becomes relevant. So that way, my research for materials is about what could be best for this performer to come to its best. Now, apart from this kind of a general, very holistic view, let me also tell you in plain design senses, when I approach a design, particularly, my emphasis are on two things: performance of the space, that's the functionality of the space, which we consider thoroughly from the brief and account for every detail. And also another kind of performance from the end user or the client or yourself. I had this very, very interesting example where, I was called in by a very, very famous movie scriptwriter saying that he can't write anything in his house in spite of having a very beautiful studio, absolutely air conditioned, beautiful, spectacular. Going into that studio to find out maybe a reason and to help him, I searched into his past and I find that he came from very humble beginnings where he used to write under a tree, sitting under a tree, looking at a string. So, actually, maybe to break off some of that and to make a different kind of emotional space was what was needed. So even when we have all the brief and when we work for functionality and perfection, you also need to study the end user and how we can inspire him to perform in that. So those are the two things which I kind of bring together: functionality and performance from the user.
Great. And let's focus on trend. Please define with some highlights the current Indian material panorama and what prospects and trends you see in the next future.
Anna, here I'm a little lost because honestly, I'm very rooted to my context of India and even the world. In India, we are 1.4 billion people. In the world, we are 8 billion people. And it is 14% of people who are the so called people who can even say the word design or who for a designer. The 86% who struggle to make the ends meet or the so called masses. I don't see any kind of trends happening in that part. The trends happening is almost there for shallow because it's not inclusive for me. Yes, lot of textures, patterns, colors, improving on the properties, antibacterial, all these things are coming up. But as a trend, I think what we should do is look for more open-minded solutions which can be inclusive. For me, the best trend would be to actually close in on the gap of building material and finishing material. We cannot afford to have two steps, is what I strongly feel. What we build should actually be able to be there as finishing material also. It is difficult. How can we bridge the gap? Exposed bricks, exposed laterite, exposed stone, all these comes with its own limitations. But to have an applied finishing coat or some surface treatment and in any kind of beautiful trends may not be kind of feasible for so many. So why can't us look for trends wherein we bridge this gap? And the actual beauty is, for example, the brick bonding, when people lay that, there are some imperfections probably in the way the mortar is used and all that. That's actually part of our craft, our passion. It is somebody's story they are telling on that particular day. He was doing this and he is passing on to us. So, such finishes and trends, when we kind of encourage, can come with a lot of value also. So particularly in India, where everybody says in India we live with memories and stories and not in spaces. So this is the kind of trends which we actually look for. Particularly in residences, otherwise we are using very simple because we cannot afford, majority cannot afford, and people who can actually afford can use any kind of materials which are available. For contract, it is always standardized. Here again, I'm seeing a welcome trend. Designers are becoming more experimental and more experiential. Other than what the companies are providing, for example, in my own Lemuridian project, it is actually by the sea, and the design team says that all the rooms can be the same. How can it be? Because we are all not the same. The spaces also, we like to have some difference. But yes, I understand. Therefore, what did we do? We were trying with some finishes and paints, and then we actually kind of ended up trying to correct the color of the paint by rubbing it, and suddenly it was like wavy and it brought a lot of insights as if we are near the coast and the sea. Therefore, we used that same technique. We experimented on same kind of approach where we brought in colors and then we messed it up and then we tried to create textures and all that. Thereby, designers can be very creative also and experimental also. That's also happening a lot in India. Young designers, particularly, they are very bold nowadays to look at truthfully.
Yours is such an interesting point of view. And in the last year, it hasn't been possible to travel because of the pandemic and attend on any events. How do the inputs and new ideas come to life?
Okay. So in the last year, yes, we all agree that, there is a huge upheaval. And there is no other way than new ideas because we found that old ideas may not hold good. But here again, we say about a new normal. I don't even see a new normal. I think we are becoming a little timid. We are not opening our eyes. How can we say that there is a new normal? How can you say that there won't be another epidemic? This time, COVID, I think even when it was very deadly, I think it was not that airborne. It was contained to some extent. Tomorrow, if something happens to that extent, what will we do? Will we end up in spacesuits kind of thing? Like astronauts with a small oxygen cylinder? Why are we not looking at it? Where will there will be a need for an evacuation? And then what will happen if countries close borders that these people will not be accommodated? Lot of it's not only about design, a lot of political, social, economic spheres are coming into act. But I'm saying there is new normal. There are only new uncertainties. But here again, the good thing is that we as a race, sapiens, we are robust, we are resilient, we have this undying spirit to survive no matter what. Now, again, being a little realistic, one idea which interested me is homes are suddenly full of small spaces where they divide for people and maybe use it, or the same space is multitasking in another way. And then people don't go to offices. Suddenly, huge office buildings are vacant. Commercial complexes, malls are all vacant because social distancing and travel is not at all encouraged now. So I had this idea. Finally, we are nomads. We cannot be stationed like this. We want to move. And as I told you, if there is an extreme case of necessity of an evacuation, then also we have to move. So basically, I was thinking maybe instead of stationary houses, movable rooms may be an option. It's crazy. I'm known for my craziness also. And if you look at movable rooms, we are talking about cars or let's say caravan or something in between. All these offices where we have to go. We have our cars, we go in, we plug in to the same hub, we make use of the same facility, we go back, we get again plugged into the same hub of the home, just like space stations where shuttles go and get parked. So maybe this is an interesting idea I would like to work on as to a little bit of mobility, a small space. Even in spite of extreme conditions, we have a cocoon of space rather than a suit to cover us with oxygen cylinder at the back. We have some space. So I think particularly Indians are known for jugaad, the thinking out of box. All these could be possibilities. There cannot be a new normal also, only new uncertainties, which we have to deal with our creative self. And designers are creative. All of us are creative. Like human beings, we have had a lot of story wherein we have proved ourselves as survived.
And I'd like to talk about the influence of technology on trends. Because thanks to the development of new production and decorative technologies, we are assisting to the rapid progress of a new generation of materials. I don't know, for example, antibacterial or equipped with hyper-realistic decoration. Considering this innovation or other, what are the requirements that you consider essential to ensure that the materials constitute a real added value for design projects?
Yeah, I will start with that last phrase which we used, like added value. The added value is when we can actually filter the benefits of all our research technology onto the masses on a horizontal way, rather than going for very, very expensive research and then results which can be given only to the small percentage. So for me, lot is happening, well and good, but we must have some very focused, concentrated efforts going on to how to make it inclusive to all people. If COVID has taught us anything, it is this lesson also. We cannot be independent or we cannot ignore the masses. Because if they are also not taken care of, one way or other, the race cannot survive. Their well being is very much part of our well being. Therefore, mostly, I think all such agencies, all such organizations should now come in to actually embrace the entire population of the world and see how we can reach out and ensure some minimum decent spaces and comfort, security, and protection for people. Homes are basically shelters. How can we do this? That shelter part and make it available to all. Apart from that, these trends which you have, or this researches which you have said is going on into making antibacterial, antipollutant, all this is very, very much the need of the time too. We know that this planet is in a very, very delicate situation. So many things are coming together, and we don't even know where we are going. Albert Einstein said, we have made a ship full with all comforts and luxuries. The only thing we don't have is a compass. We don't know where we are going. And it is like, it is okay also. And few people who make this cry, they are looked upon as what are they talking about. So, but this is a reality. So, apart from all the specific research is happening, I think that the overall picture should be kept in mind. Now, particularly after COVID, when I talk to research on materials or companies, they talk about what they have come up in such a short time, and that is amazing. Antibacterial and lot of anti-pollution. So many solutions are being offered, very, very realistic. Even when we are away from the real scene, the finishes can bring us real sensory experiences. All this is there. I also think that the next few researchers may go into engaging our other senses. Usually we experience the finishes, everything with our eyes. But now, maybe we may be looking at other researches also wherein we engage our ears. Even to hear the hiss of an AC, talking about a purified air, maybe part of a space. Also, if materials can be kind of coming with some kind of a perfume or a scent, where it talks about some antibacterial kind of smell, usually we are very averse to that. But in the new normal, like you say, it could all be very calming, comforting. So, apart from eyes and this touch, which we have always used, but even the touch is now different. We now suddenly like cold surfaces, which can be easily cleaned because again, health is an issue. So, engaging other senses into experiences, wherein materials and surfaces and spaces can make people more secure, feel more secure and comfortable, could be the future.
And about that, I'd like to do a last question about current lifestyle, because 2020 changed people's needs in relation to their home. And how do you think this new use of the domestic space will affect the interior design?
See, actually, in India, things are a little bit different. Beyond a point, we don't care about things, materials, crisis, everything. We believe in letting things be. We believe in a sixth sense where everything falls into its perspective. So, in my design also, I actually keep everything very simple. Don't go to the extremes to the paranoid level in spite of all this. And the main thrust is on Satyam Shivam Sundaram. I don't know whether you have heard it. It is about a higher elevated plane wherein you exist. Dalai Lama has said that, you stand by your window, you see the garden. You sit on your chair, you see the world. You close your eyes, you experience the whole universe. So actually, materialistic approach is not what is important, particularly in India. It is about open spaces wherein people become important, their interactions and behavior patterns become important. We use maximum local materials which will tell us the story of our fathers and forefathers, which we know how to maintain, which will always give us some memories on which we can actually anchor and go on. Yes, the solutions which come in are all welcome, but we only give it its due kind of share. Basically, it is about being ourselves. Tattvamasi, you are part of the divine self, so you will survive. It's only your deeds and what you have to do. So, whenever you have a space, you make sure that that is okay or that is good enough for your life, your family, the way you have evolved and the way you want to live. That's it.
Great, Jabeen. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. It was also a pleasure for me because this has also made me think about few things which I wouldn't have otherwise thought about.
And I'd like also to thank everyone for following us. I'd like to remind you that Jabeen interview will be online on Tecna Next. So keep following the digital platform and the social media for all the information, and see you at the next design talk.
Thank you.